Well, hello, and thanks for watching another episode of News of the Pews, where you can count on unapologetic 2A advocacy. Gun rights are human rights. Now, you've probably heard all the arguments for and against open carry a dozen times, but I came across one you may not have considered, articulated in an especially compelling way. Take a look.
I just left the grocery store, and I saw someone open carrying. I fucking hate it here. What the Why do you need to bring a gun to the grocery store?
You hear that, folks? She hates the place she moved to because she saw somebody with a gun.
I use these weapons to shop for groceries, dick.
This is literally all it takes to keep this sort of person out of your neighborhood. If you've got one of those "Don't California my fill in the blank" stickers on your pick 'em up truck, this is the answer to your problem. People say an open carrier will be the first target in a robbery, but that theory is pants on head stupid. If the thug does manage to see the gun in time for it to affect his OODA loop, he's probably going to rob someplace else, not deliberately start a gunfight. Open carry can provide a deterrent. It's more comfortable as the weather heats up, and doing it tastefully helps inoculate the public to the fact that gun owners are normal people who buy groceries and put the carts back. It shifts the Overton window, and it utterly enrages wackadoodle septum ring control freaks, which should be reason enough. But open carry does require more attention to weapon retention. Stay alert, use a retention holster, and train on weapon retention techniques, preferably in a force-on-force class.
That's my purse! I don't know you!
But hey, it would be impossible for me to produce quality 2A propaganda without you. So before I tell you about the case attacking the Commerce Clause foundation underpinning all of federal gun control, a quick reminder that News of the Pews is a one-man newsroom. I research the stories, write the script, record the show, edit the video, and occasionally remember to sleep and eat. And I do all of that without corporate influence. Mostly because nobody has offered to pay me, but still, this channel survives on support from viewers like you. So if you're in a comfortable place in life, please check out the shirts, mugs, stickers, and magnets at the link down below, and of course right here. If you're not in a comfortable place though, please don't spend money you don't have on stuff your family doesn't need. Just enjoy this 2A propaganda at the price of free fitty, share it with somebody who needs corrupting, and keep praying for us. The Dagobah system has had constitutional carry for more than 2 years now. If you're a peaceable adult 18 or older, Louisiana says you can carry concealed without begging the government for a permission slip. So why did Firearms Policy Coalition just sue Louisiana? Because of a wonderfully stupid trap created when state and federal gun laws collide. The Federal Gun-Free School Zones Act makes it a crime to carry a loaded gun within 1,000 feet of a school, even if you never set foot on school property. That makes navigating a typical city nearly impossible. There is an exception for people with carry permits, but it has to be issued by the state where the school is located. Permitless carry doesn't count, and neither does a valid out-of-state permit. So what that all means is that Louisiana says an 18-year-old can carry without a permit, while federal law draws invisible bubbles around every school and says he needs a Louisiana permit to enter them. Except Louisiana refuses to issue one until he turns 18. So that's the reason FPC filed Poole versus Hodges and moved for summary judgment the same day, because the Fifth Circuit has already ruled in Reese versus ATF that peaceable 18 to 20-year-olds are part of the people protected by the Second Amendment. Louisiana now has to explain why these adults can carry without a license but can't get the one piece of paper they need to avoid a stupid federal felony zone. Just last week, I told you the Third Circuit became the first federal appeals court to strike down a state assault weapon ban. 4 days later, the First Circuit upheld the same kind of ban in Massachusetts. That, my friends, is a circuit court split, which kind of, but not quite, forces the Supremes to settle the issue. Now, maybe you're thinking they're already considering assault weapons, and that is true. Viramontes and Grant ask whether AR-15s and similar rifles are protected, but they don't address magazines. Now, I neglected to mention last time that when the Third Circuit also struck down New Jersey's magazine ban, directly contradicting the First Circuit's earlier conclusion, that created a split on magazines. So the First Circuit is on the other side of both questions, while this case already before the Supremes answers only one. They'll probably have to come back for the magazine question too.
Y'all come back now, here.
In this Massachusetts case, the panel said it was bound by its earlier Capon decision and repeated that banning AR-15s does not heavily burden self-defense because residents can still own other guns. That's the Second Amendment version of saying the government can ban newspapers because you could still get your information through interpretive dance. The plaintiff argued that AR-15s are owned by tens of millions of Americans and therefore protected as arms in common use, but the court said he properly developed that argument too late. So this wasn't the ultimate judicial cage match over commonly owned rifles. It was a narrow facial challenge running headfirst into existing First Circuit precedent. And your final story for today involves a convicted heroin trafficker who may be about to put the biggest dent in federal power we've seen in decades. Curtis Squire is not exactly the sympathetic plaintiff that you would design in a laboratory if you had the opportunity, but his case reaches far beyond him and far beyond gun rights. Police searched his New Orleans home while investigating a shooting and found a handgun. The gun was not connected to the shooting, but Squire had prior felony convictions, so the feds charged him under the felon in possession statute. A 3-judge Fifth Circuit panel rejected his Second Amendment challenge, ruling that historical tradition permits disarming convicted drug traffickers. Ordinarily, that would end the story, but the full Fifth Circuit agreed to rehear the case, vacated the panel ruling, and turned to a more fundamental question.
The ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything.
What gives the federal government authority to criminalize purely local possession of a handgun in the first place? Congress has no general police power, so it hangs Section 922G on its authority to regulate interstate commerce. Except Squire wasn't buying or selling anything. Well, except for heroin. He possessed a handgun in his Louisiana home. The government's entire connection to interstate commerce is that the gun and ammunition were manufactured outside Louisiana and therefore crossed a state line sometime before he possessed them. That's the sleight of hand behind all federal gun law. Congress adds the words "in or affecting commerce," and courts treat an object's ancient road trip across state lines as though it's an eternal path to infringe forever. Justice Thomas famously attacked this reasoning in Gonzalez versus Raich, where federal agents seized 6 medical marijuana plants grown in California that had never been bought, sold, or carried across state lines. He wrote, "If Congress can regulate this under the Commerce Clause, then it can regulate virtually anything, and the federal government is no longer one of limited and enumerated powers." Thomas raised the issue again in his recent Hemani concurrence and invited lower courts to reconsider Section 922G. The Fifth Circuit just accepted that invitation. It hasn't struck anything down yet, and every circuit to consider this question has upheld the minimal interstate commerce hook, but if the Fifth Circuit rules that an object's past travel is not enough to make present local possession suddenly become interstate commerce, it will create a conflict with every other circuit and put enormous pressure on the Supremes to decide whether the Commerce Clause has any meaningful limit left. Well, folks, rounds complete on 2, but before I get to your moment of completion, I'd like to remind you this program was made possible by contributions from the William H. Crocker Foundation, E. Senior, Ozark Pilgrim, Squirted Glizzies, and viewers like you. I love you.